Hi, Corinne Casazza here. Today, I want to talk to you about trust and synchronicities while you're writing. So I knew I wanted to write since I was 8, and I wrote my first book at the age of 36. So what happened in between there? A lot of, oh my God, how do I start? What happens in the middle? How do I end it? I'll never finish it, right? So when you have all this noise going on in your head, it's a lot easier just not to write at all. So for a long time, I didn't. And we'll talk later in the week about, these limiting fears around writing, about getting started and not being able to finish, all that stuff. We'll talk about that later in the week. So when I did actually start writing my first book, the thing that got me going was I started with an outline. Now, great books have been written with and without an outline. For me, I started, and halfway through the book, I tossed the outline. I didn't need it anymore because I had learned to trust. So how did that happen? Well, I was working at a high-tech job when I started writing, and I got up 2 hours before I had to start my shift. So I had to sit in front of the PC every morning for 2 hours and believe I had something to say. And I did that for about 6 months, and I had 75 pages written. And then I got so blocked, I couldn't bring myself to sit in front of the computer. And then I got it in my head that if I could hypnotize myself, I could write. And so this came from the idea that when I was riding the train to work, I would write stories about people as they came on the train. And then I wouldn't read them till I left that night. When I was on my way home, I would read the stories. And I had no recollection of ever writing these stories because I was half asleep, right? I was in that state between sleeping and waking, which led me to think if I could hypnotize myself, I could write. So I went online, and so this, what I'm about to tell you is a synchronicity, right? It looks like a coincidence. I went online, someplace where I used to take yoga, and the very next day, there was a 4-week class on self-hypnosis starting. So I took the class, and then I got back in front of my keyboard, and I wrote the rest of that book so quickly that my friend who was editing it said to me, "Corinne, what are you doing? Where is this coming from? How are you writing it so fast?" And I said, "I'm putting my hands on the keyboard and asking what happens next." And that is what I was doing. And from that space, I realized that those answers weren't coming from me. They were coming from, my authentic self, my God essence, source, whatever label you choose to give it, because really writing this book was my spiritual awakening. I started to wake up and realize there was more to me than just this physical body, right? So a couple of other things happened also while I was in the middle of this that really helped. So I went down into the basement of my New Hampshire home, and I pulled a book out of a box, and it was Deepak Chopra's How to Know God. And I opened the book, pointed to a page, closed my eyes, and when I opened them, I found this passage that said, "Every book exists in its entirety in the universe. All we have to do is listen." And I thought, that really takes the pressure off. I don't have to write, I just have to listen. And for me, that was perfect guidance because I'm primarily clairaudient. So that's how I write. I hear things in my head and I write them down. And I thought, well, that's easy. I can just listen. That takes all the pressure off. And then another thing that helped me, and this was a practice that I did every day, I had the book Stephen Pressfield's War of Art, and it has a bunch of little essays in it. And so I would open that book and also use that as an oracle, point to a page and read it. And whatever I needed to hear for that date to get me writing was what I read. I mean, it was really uncanny. It's really awesome how an oracle like that or a deck of cards really is always right on and tells you exactly what you need to hear. So, and you can use that with any book that you like about writing, you know, Stephen King's On Writing, whatever works for you. Start using it as an oracle. Open it up, see what happens. And, you know, I'm sharing these things with you because these are the things that worked for me. It's my hope that it either works for you or it leads you to what works for you. So if I say something that doesn't resonate with you, now just throw it out. Use what works for you. So synchronicities. When I was writing, it was my second book, Walk Like an Egyptian, and I lived in Sedona at the time. And so every day, every book is different the way you write it. So for that book, I sat in the Arizona sunshine every afternoon and wrote that book. And I wrote it longhand in a notebook and then typed it in. So I was writing that book, and I always joke and say, when I don't know what happens next, I write description. So I was writing this description of my childhood home in Boston where I grew up. And I was talking about the backyard, and my dad had a very green thumb. So even though we lived in the city, that whole backyard was full of vegetables, roses, flowers, every square inch of it pretty much. And even the fence that was the border between us and our neighbors, it was a cement fence. And it was cinder block. It had holes in the top. So even the top of that fence, my dad put dirt in there and filled it with flowers. And so the flowers that were in this fence were portulacas. Now, they're little flowers about this big that come in a rainbow of colors. So I wrote about the portulacas that day. And then I walked outside in Arizona to get my mail. And I had this big planter on the left side of my house, which was also cement, by the way. And I walked by this planter and I did a double take because there was a flower in this planter. I'd never seen anything in the planter before. And not only was it a flower, it looked to me like a portulaca, a yellow portulaca. I've never seen anything in this planter. This just kind of popped up out of nowhere. I certainly hadn't planted anything in there because I don't have my dad's green thumb. And so I went over and looked, and it was a yellow portulaca. I mean, I even went online and Googled portulaca to be sure that I remembered what it looked like. And it was a yellow portulaca that just popped up in that planter to let me know, oh, by the way, you're on the right track. Keep going. And then, so from the last book that I had written is The Adventures of Bluebelly and Sugar Shaker. So I wrote that book. I'm back in Boston now. I wrote it in Boston. So I had revised a scene, and I wasn't sure I was happy with it. I was second guessing myself, and I was driving up the highway to hot yoga. It was January. It was really cold. Driving to hot yoga, and all the way I'm second guessing myself about this scene. Is it appropriate? Is the humor in it good? Is it any better than the first time I wrote it? And I had put Iron Man in the scene, the character that Robert Downey Jr. portrays in the movies. So I'm like, should Iron Man stay in the scene? I don't know. I'm second guessing myself all the way to yoga. When I get in there, I'm in the studio on the floor stretching, and I'm still second guessing myself. And all of a sudden I look up, and there's this guy in front of me. He pulls off his t-shirt, and his whole back is a tattoo. Guess what the tattoo was? Yep, Iron Man. And it's a good thing I was sitting on the floor because I think I would have fallen over, but my jaw just dropped and I was laughing. I'm like, what are the odds of that? I mean, really, what are the odds? So I was just laughing, and I was like, okay, universe, I get it. I get it. Iron Man stays in the scene. So when I was working on, the same book, The Adventures of Bluebelly and Sugar Shaker, I wanted to my character to have a funny name. Her name is Isabella Calamari. And so when I did research, I had already decided on the name. I did a little research, and Isabella is the Spanish form of Elizabeth, which was my mom's name. So I thought that was cool. And then Calamari. So I was looking at, I found this piece of colored pencil artwork that one of my friends had made me. And I was looking at it. And for the first time, I saw down in the left corner, there was a little green calamari, an octopus. And I was like, that's cool. That's some confirmation for me. And then that same day, I went to get a massage. And when I walked in, I saw a stuffed octopus on the counter. And I asked the massage therapist about it because I thought it was really odd. You don't really think of octopi as being cuddly. So I asked her about it, and she said, in Hawaiian Huna, octopus represents Divine Mother, which of course was perfect for my character. So that was more confirmation, validation, synchronicity that the name worked. And so these are the things that let you know when you're writing that you're on the right track and that really keep you going. So the more that you pay attention to what's going on, the more these things happen. And they don't just happen in writing, they happen in every area of your life. For instance, last week I was in Sedona. I went back to Sedona for a conference, and I was at my table at the conference, and a woman asked me what I do. And I said, I write books. And she was like, oh my God, I need you. It turned out that she's a physician who had healed herself of cancer, and she is in the middle of a book. And she said, I don't know what angle to take. I started, but I'm not sure where I'm going. And I said, I can help you with all that. So, and she asked me, who else have you worked with? And I said, see that conference promoter over there? I've been working with her for 13 years. You can ask her all about me. She didn't need to do that. She wanted to work with me on the spot. So that was really cool and synchronistic. And these are the things that happen when you're paying attention. So I think that's about what I want to cover today. I also want to mention an offer I'm making this week, and that is a free consultation with me. So we can get online on a Skype or a video call, a Zoom call, and talk about what projects you have going on and how I can help. And I will have a segment later in the week that talks about how I work and my process. But I'll also, I'll edit up to 10 pages for you. I'll give you feedback on 10 pages so you'll get a better idea of how I work. All right. And so you can just send me a private message if you're interested in that consultation with me. Cool. All right. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.